Hi, hello, welcome. Today we're haters. For this video, I'm going to be reading 1-star reviews of some of my favorite books just for funsies, just because I think it would be interesting. And I know that reading and art is very, very subjective, and a lot of people have a lot of opinions, and a lot of people have opinions that vary widely from mine. So I thought it would just be an interesting take to see what other people think of books that I deem really good pieces of art. So this is not by any means an exhaustive list of all the books that I love or that are my favorites, but these are just some that I've enjoyed reading over the years and some that have gotten some hate over the years. So let's dive into it. So we're gonna start with Divergent by Veronica Roth. I read this book many years ago as a teen. It definitely isn't a book that I would ever reread. I definitely have my issues with it, but when I read it, I remembered really liking it. And this one review is a 1-star review and literally just says, I hate this book. Valid. You're allowed to have that opinion. I wouldn't go so far as to say that I hated Divergent. I enjoyed it while I was reading it. I think actually the series goes downhill with Insurgent and Allegiant. Yeah, I can understand why people don't like this. It feels very Hunger Games-esque, but then you combine it with Harry Potter, like the sorting houses and everything. And it was definitely during that dystopian boom where everybody was trying to write about a corrupt society, which actually isn't unique. A lot of writers have been writing about corrupt society for decades, centuries, long time. But I wouldn't go so far as to say I hate it. I definitely have issues with it. But, you know, I can understand. We have another Divergent book review, and Isaac says, I've never read an author less interested in exploring the implications of her own fictional world. And that, my friends, is a hot take. Actually, I don't know if it's a hot take, but it's definitely something I've never thought about regarding this book. But that's something I'll have to stew on for a little bit, because when I read Divergent, I don't think I was necessarily looking to like super hyper analyze it, and I'll have to think back on the plot and the characters because this review is making me think. Next I have Lord of the Flies by William Goulding. This might be surprising to some to be on here, but this was a book for required reading. I think everyone reads it because it's a required reading in high school or middle school whenever you read it. Actually, I think I read this in middle school. I really enjoyed it. I really liked the dissection of humanity and the idea that we all devolve into beasts, cannibals, terrible people when you remove society. Do I necessarily agree and think that's what would happen? No. However, that's not something that I want to happen in this world in order to figure it out, and so I enjoyed reading about it to kind of get a little take on it and William Goulding's opinion in this case. This review says, libertarian geronophobic experiment goes awry when Satan takes over Island Paradise. Protagonist summon Deus Ex Machina with cutting-edge cellular conch shell. The conch shell, man. Like, I fully understand why some people don't like this book. It is morbid in some regards. It is teenagers on an island trying to kill each other, breaking up into tribes. I think I just really enjoyed it because the plot was engaging, and I never really thought too hard about this scenario. I mean, who would think about the scenario getting stranded on an island forming tribes as preparatory English boys? But yeah, I can understand why people think this book is terrible. However, I am in the camp of I enjoy reading about scenarios that I do not want to happen in real life, just so people can unpack how they think humanity would handle it and just kind of give a analysis of society and humanity as a whole. I find those books fascinating. And so, Lord of the Flies. Anthem by Ayn Rand was a book I also read in high school English. Is this better? Will this be better? I enjoyed mainly Anthem for the unique perspective. It was something that I've never read before, and I really liked it, and it really stood out to me. However, this reviewer, Jenny, just says no. I can respect it. Next, we have The Night Circus, an inventive world where there are two dueling magicians trying to, I believe, be the heir of the like ringmaster who runs it. I remember it being really whimsical and fantastical and fun, and I enjoyed it. I actually own it because I do want to reread it at some point. However, Joanne, and I'm including this review because her profile photo, like, how do you get on Joanne's bad side? You could tell that Joanne had a lengthy discussion about this book with her book club and was just not having it, didn't want to unpack it, was just upset with the choice by Betty in the book club, and she knew her rights, and she decided to tell all of us that she didn't like it. She says the marvelously creative first third of the book was just magical, and then it died. I hope Joanne is still reading to her heart's content and hopefully reading some books that she enjoys and that live vivaciously. Next, we have Red Queen, a series I take no hate on, so I'm kind of afraid of this one. Mainly because I just love the world, I love the characters, I love the idea of it. Yes, it's been compared to the Hunger Games. I think the Hunger Games is a template for so many good books because it's just a very well done dissection of society. If you have watched an Emmett Reed's video before, you know that the love for the Hunger Games runs deep here. We'll never not talk about it, gush about it. You know the drill. So I'm not gonna say any more, but back to what we are talking about with Red Queen. I thought it was cool. I thought it was the Hunger Games, but more fantastical, and I enjoyed it. However, Mira says this is the Walmart version of the Hunger Games. And though that review physically pains me, I can see where she's coming from. Another Red Queen review from Mayim. She says, very poor version of Red Rising. Also, the leading female is an idiot. Consider yourselves warned. This is funny that she mentions Red Rising because I am actually reading Morning Star by Pierce Brown right now, the third book in that trilogy, and absolutely adoring it. Love it so much. So excited about it. But since I have read Red Rising and looking at Red Queen, the name link there is obvious. I 100% see how some people could take the Red Queen series as a combination of the Hunger Games and Red Rising. They deal with a lot of the same themes. However, when you are reading this genre of book, there's bound to be some crossover, and clearly Mayim thought it was too much. It was too much and needed to be more original, which fair. Which I can understand, even though I disagree with it. Next, we have ACOTAR. I had to throw ACOTAR in here. I really did enjoy reading the books. I know they get a lot of love, they get a lot of hate. I am the camp that I enjoy the books. Are they my absolute favorite things to read ever? No. Will I defend them as an immersive story? Yes. And so Eden here also has some opinion. She says, Sarah J. Maas, what are you writing and what the hell am I reading? I think people for Sarah J. Maas are in one of two camps. They're either ride or die, love everything she does, think that she can do no wrong. And then there are people in the camp of, I read this to see what the hype is about, and very, 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 very much so do not like it, do not enjoy it. And that is the beauty of reading. You can choose what you want to read and not read what you don't want to read. Next we have Artemisa by Andy Ware, which I'm just now realizing it is not Artemis. I thought it was Artemis the entire time, and so I'm having a very big case of the Mandela effect because I swore it was Artemis, but it's not. A reviewer named Leo says, no, esta vez no, which from my Spanish experience, I know he is saying no this time, no. And I would confidently say that's because he enjoyed The Martian but did not enjoy Artemisa. I've read both. I really did enjoy The Martian. I also really enjoyed Artemisa. I thought they were both great. I think it's probably easy to hate on this book because The Martian was so well loved. It became a blockbuster, you know. It's a movie adaptation with Matt Damon. So a lot of people love it. A lot of people think it has more merit. In my opinion, I would say, yeah, The Martian is better, but would I rate Artemisa 1 star? No. Also, why am I saying the name so much? I don't even know if I'm pronouncing it right. Next, we have Circe by Madeline Miller. I love this story for the writing. That is the main thing. The way it's written is beautiful, and the way the story is told is beautiful. Have I read the original Circe myth? No. So for this specific review, I can't speak too much to the original Greek myth, but I wanted to include it. Ben says, this book is little more than an extension of the dictionary definitions for characters of Greek mythology, with tortuous dialogue and a lack of chemistry or characterization to fill the pages in between. Early in the book, time passes by and centuries and storylines worth exploring are dismissed, yada 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 yada. I will recommend this book only to my worst enemies, and that is a big statement. I mean, using books as warfare against your enemies, like, hey, you enjoy this so much, here you go. And it just being like a Trojan horse is wild. You go, Ben. Next, we have The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue by V.E. Schwab. If you're new here, go on and check out my auto read authors video. I talk about V.E. Schwab, and I specifically talk about this book. It is one of my absolute favorites, and because it is one of my absolute favorites, I am very well aware that there are some aspects of it that are not perfect, that garner a lot of judgment and dislike. And this review, I think, hits on it pretty well. I wish God had given me as little self-awareness as it gave the characters, the narrative, and the author. And I've seen a bunch of other reviews talking about how did Addie LaRue live for hundreds and hundreds of years and never meet a person of color? And to that, I say that is a great point. Now, I definitely think there could have been more representation in The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue, specifically because there is no way that Addie would have been so localized to only meet a specific class of people. Like, it talks about how she goes from France, and then once World War II starts, she goes to New York, and she's in America. And like, there's no way you live that long and travel that much and don't see another person of color or a different ethnicity than you or race. And so I think that was a big miss, and it is a fair critique on this book. And so, regarding the little self-awareness portion of this review, thinking back on this plot and the characters, I can get where she's going with it. I'm not certain I agree fully, but to really unpack that, I think I'd have to pull the book back up and reread it. The Dreamers by Karen Thompson Walker, another auto-read author for me. The Dreamers, I loved it again because of the writing. It's so sticky. The way Karen Thompson Walker writes is stunning, and I really, really enjoyed it. I enjoyed it just for the way the story is told purely. That was the main reason that it made it on my list. And I also think the story is interesting, but I wouldn't say that the story is blowing me out of the water. It was interesting enough for me to pick it up, but it wasn't something where I expected it to be like this all-encompassing, amazing tale. I still don't think it is that, but the writing is stellar. But Lauren says, you ever fall asleep and then wake up later? And if we're purely talking about the plot here, sums it up. Next, we have Air of Fire. This is the third book in the Throne of Glass series by Sarah J. Maas. It is one of my favorites. This was the first book in the Throne of Glass series that I gave 5 stars. Throne of Glass, the first book, I think I gave 3.5. I really struggled with it at the beginning. I wasn't as roped in as I wanted to be or expected to be. Crown of Midnight, similarly, we kept climbing. I think it was 4 stars. But Air of Fire was the first one where I really, really enjoyed it and liked where the story was going and the characters. We also meet Manon, and she is amazing in her own right. So Ale says, IDK, I just hate Rowan. Yikes. And that is a fair opinion to have coming out of Air of Fire. I also hated Rowan coming out of this book. I don't necessarily think there is anything I could say to defend his actions on some of this, aside from saying that the characters in this book are not perfect and use anger in interesting ways and don't treat each other the best with the excuse of like past drama or hurts. However, I would say it was unacceptable. I did not enjoy it, and so I understand why people would take some of Rowan's actions in this book and immediately knock it down many, many stars. I personally think that the rest of the book is outstanding and didn't choose to rate it solely on that interaction. However, I 100% get why someone would rate this 1 star. I have another review for Air of Fire that says, I wish I were Feyre from book 1 of ACOTAR because then I wouldn't have been able to read this. And I put this in here because that's hilarious. If you haven't read ACOTAR, our main character is illiterate. She doesn't know how to read. And so there are many, many jokes in the community about that. That is a very creative way to say that you hated Air of Fire. I mean, you're pulling in like the multiverse of Sarah J. Maas, pulling in a different character, and I enjoyed reading that. Next, we have One Dark Window by Rachel Gillig. This is a book that is new to my favorite shelf as of last month. I really love the series. I thought it was done really well. I think the magic system is innovative and interesting, and I just enjoyed it. However, this person wrote, what if someone wrote a Vespertine / Caraval AU where all of the characters were inexplicably named after trees? This is what. This one I think is one of the first reviews where I disagree. I read Caraval. I really, really liked it, but I think that One Dark Window is completely different, so I don't really understand what the reviewer is trying to say regarding this and rating it so low. But again, everyone is entitled to their own opinion. And I'm sure if this person and I got together to chat about it, we would have a really interesting conversation about it because I have questions. And I'm going to finish this video off with a 1-star review from Red Rising. Like I said earlier, I am in the middle of the 3rd book in the trilogy, really, really enjoying it so far. And Kelly said about Red Rising, after an interesting opening, it just descended into rampant misogyny and utter nonsense. The whole middle part just made me think about how much more fun Capture the Flag is in Percy Jackson. Yeah, I can see it. I bought into Red Rising mainly because I was fascinated by Darrow's inner turmoil about what he was doing, the society he was in, like the friends he was making, the relationships he was forming, and his ultimate end goal, his struggle with where he started, where he is now, and where he was intended to go. And so I really bought into it for that aspect of it, like the internal struggle and seeing that, and also seeing Darrow grow as a person from like a very cocky, young hell diver into who he is now. I mean, of course, that growth is in Golden Sun and Morningstar, not just in Red Rising. So if you've only read Red Rising, I can understand not being willing to hold out for that. But I personally saw a glimmer of that and grabbed hold of it, and then I'm so grateful I did, because I enjoyed the discourse of tyrannical society. And if you are not catching a theme here, I really, really enjoy books that unpack society and parallel our own in some ways. And it's just such a safe space to be able to unpack and talk about government and human nature and society and politics as a whole through literature and through books. And so I really, really like discourse about that, just because it's a way to think deeper and more critically just about life in general, and doing it through a safe, fun medium such as books. I'm really sad that Kelly didn't like it, because I think it's a phenomenal series. So that is all I have for you today. Thank you so much for sticking around as I read one-star reviews of some pivotal books that I've read in my reading journey, some favorites. And if you're new here, feel free to check out some of my other videos. I talk about some of my auto-buy authors, I talk about my reading philosophy, and a bunch of other fun stuff. I even go over my favorites bookshelf, which has been a very fun video for me to film. So thank you so much for joining me today. Have a great rest of your day, and I will see you guys again soon.